everybody, and welcome to another episode of the eShop Action Committee. I am Dan Koopman, and with me are Mike and Alex from Choice Provisions.
Hi, Dan. How are you?
Hey, Dan.
How you doing? It's crazy. I don't think I've talked to you guys all that much outside of pure social media.
That might be true. And if we have talked in the past, it's probably a long time ago with the original Bit.Trip series.
Yes, I think many years ago I recall one of our speakings. But yes, we do occasionally tweet back and forth.
Yes. I think Alex I did an interview with you back when Runner was almost coming out. So,
Runner 1.
Yeah.
The first one?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's how long ago I think it is.
6 years? Was that 6 years
that was
ago?
A long time ago. That was 2010?
Yeah, that's 2010.
Wow.
That's 7 years ago because Warner came out at the beginning of June.
Amazing. Almost a decade ago.
And here we are.
Yes. We're here about... we're going to talk about some few things. We're going to talk about Bit.Trip series. We're going to talk about Runner 2 and Runner 3. I guess the first place to start is that if people don't know you, could you introduce yourself to the public?
Sure. My name is Alex Noisy, and I'm a co-founder of Choice Provisions with Mike Roush, who's with me.
And I am Mike Roush, who is the other co-founder with Alex Noisy, who is with me as well.
And here we are.
Short to the point. I like it.
I guess if you wanted a little bit of background, we made the original Bit.Trip series and continue to make games with Commander Video and dominate as hard as possible.
We took a short hiatus to make Laser Life and Tharsis, which were sort of outside of the Bit.Trippy style and gameplay style and visual style, but here we're coming back to Runner 3, which is an explosion for the eyeballs.
Yes. Well, the life of Choice Provisions started as Gaijin Games, where you developed the Bit.Trip series. How do you look back at that experience like years later?
I don't know, I guess fondly. It's also been a lot of work. We just kind of constantly just go. I don't know how much you or your listeners follow our development cycles, but they're pretty rapid. At the beginning, when we started the company, we wanted to make games fast, and it somehow ended up in our office culture, I guess. It's tiring.
I look back relatively fondly, but maybe not necessarily on the original Bit.Trip series, but more of the time of when the indie scene was starting to really grow, and oftentimes you'll hear it referred to as sort of like there was this period of extreme love. It was like all these points of light were popping up and then finding each other, and
you mean like with the other indies?
With the other indies and stuff. And I don't necessarily know if that's gone, but there's a lot of points of light right now. And so the industry is kind of changing, but I still look back on those days with a fondness in my heart. And of course, like Alex was saying, the development on the original games, we were making one game every 3 months and then getting that onto the Wii, which I don't think a lot of gamers know about the process of actually releasing a video game, but there's a lot of steps involved. So we were kind of in a daze for the whole original Bit.Trip series.
That's true.
Well, those games have come to various platforms, and I think a question that I've never asked you guys is, what is your favorite out of those initial 6?
I can tell you my least favorite.
Oh, wow.
I'll start
That's
there.
Fun. Let's start.
Actually, it's not. It's not my
most.
least favorite, but I will say that I just cannot play Bit.Trip Core. I think I've made it. I don't think I've even beaten the second world in Bit.Trip Core. I do like the game, but my mind just doesn't work that way. But I think my favorite is arguably Runner. I think if you were to add up all of the things I like, Runner would average out being my favorite, although Beat is definitely a contender, and Flux as well.
Wow. Well, that's a lot. That's sort of like the only game you didn't mention Oh, Void and Fate.
Void,
mentioned
Void
those
and
two.
Fate. I know.
So you don't have an absolute favorite.
But I also look at the original series as like one game.
I
so
do too. See, that's the thing.
You know what I mean? But Runner is my answer.
Okay, I was gonna say it might be Core.
Oh wow!
I can see that.
But at the same time, I was recently playing Bit.Trip Core, and I actually said out loud, like this is not even a joke. I was alone in the room, and I actually said out loud, "What was I thinking?" Because it's so hard.
I would also like to say that I feel like Core is probably the most honest music rhythm game of all of them.
Oh, that's
and that's why I think that you may be saying that.
Yeah, that's interesting. But for the message and the emotional impact, which is what I'm always drawn to as a gamer, like when I play video games, I'm always looking for that emotional contact and that really moving experience. And so if I were to think about that, it would definitely be the end of Bit.Trip Flux. The way that we chose to end that game.
Which not many people know about, by the way.
Yeah, so I think I might actually just
you should
talk about it, because people probably may not have experienced it. Do you mind if I sort of tell about the end of the game?
And it can only happen. It can only happen on the Nintendo Wii, by the way.
No, it happens on.
It does
on the other platforms too.
On PS4, but not as impactful.
Yeah, not as impactful. And we did a different thing on Steam as well. But so the initial, and that's actually, Mike, that's a good point. Because the initial reason we went with the Wii was because of the controller options that it afforded us. It was very interesting control scheme. So anyway, the end of Bit.Trip Flux. If any of you have played Beat or Flux, you know that you tilt the Wii remote, away from your body to move the paddle up and towards you to move it down. So you're tilting the paddle constantly to keep your paddle moving, or you're tilting your Wii remote constantly. At the end of the game, as Commander Video, as his essence sort of fizzles out into the ether, the screen does a very, very slow fade to white, but it happens while you're still playing. So you're still moving your paddle. Eventually, the whole screen goes white, and there are still tones being played as if you are still playing the game, but through this intuitive place where you can't see anything, but you're still moving the controller and you're still getting the feedback that you're playing the game, and you will continue to get that feedback so long as you move the controller. And the only way to stop the journey and to let go and allow Commander Video to transition to whatever comes next for his spirit is to set that controller down on something where the controller does not move. And then once the game detects that you have finally let go, then the game ends.
You know what's funny? I've never done that.
We've shown it to a couple of people because I think the people that have done it, they may not have, or they may have seen the screen fade and at that point put the Wiimote down or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But it's a pretty interesting from the developer standpoint to watch somebody do that. It's pretty interesting and powerful. Right. I would highly recommend doing it. And also, I think during Flux, there's a lot of Bit.Trip Beat, but in reverse, there's some patterns in there. So we tried to sort of bookend it in an interesting way.
Yeah. So from the message point of view, I think Flux might be among my favorites.
For my money, Flux is also my favorite. When Runner came out in the lead up to Fate, I would have still said Runner, but it's during the time period that Flux came out, I had some stuff happening in my life, and for some reason, I ended up playing a lot of Flux. So that sort of the message sort of resonated with me in a weird way.
You know, you're not the first person I've heard that from, and I think, and I don't know exactly what was going on in your life at the time, but we have a friend in the game industry whose father was passing away around that time. And he played the game, and he said that Flux moved him in such a crazy way, and that when he had to put that controller down, it was like him letting go. And he said that he just wept, and it was amazing for him to think about the interaction between player and game, and then of course real life. So
It's
I think
it was a similar situation as his for sure.
yeah. Well, I'm glad that it touched you. I'm glad that it could,
I mean,
there with
to a certain degree, that's the point, right? Is like we're trying to make these meaningful experiences that, the players can cue into and sort of fill in the blanks with their own thoughts or
Sure.
experiences or feelings. So it is always good to hear that that's working.
Yeah, but don't take anything away from Runner. Runner is also still my favorite. And the weird thing is, I can still play the last 3 levels of that game without making a mistake.
Of Runner?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
And I don't know how I did that. Like, this still happened like 6 months ago when I was going back to a bunch of WiiWare games. And my friend was like, we have done this 2 years ago. You go back to those last 3 levels of Runner. I want to see you try it again. And he was just looking in shock and amazement next to me.
Well, let me tell you my experience. When we started in on Runner 3, I sat down to do a playthrough of some of the Runner games.
Right.
And I did Runner 2, and I was like, man, this is a really great game. And then I went back to Runner, and I think I got to 111, and I turned to my wife, and I just had this look on my face. And I just said, wow, this is hard. So if you can still keep that up, you're a step ahead of me.
Well, 111, I don't think 111 is exactly hard. It was just a really long level.
It's very long, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's as long as you think it might be. That's but it is longer than the other levels.
It's about
Did
3
we time
minutes.
It's 2.5 minutes.
Okay.
And it
feels like
like 6 or 7 minutes. I remember because we were playing it and I was like, okay, this one, it must be like 7 minutes long. And then I played it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's only 2 minutes. This is crazy. Or 2.5 or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I know the moment where I always screw up with 111, and that's exactly after you do the long cycle of repeating certain patterns, and then have to do like a very short hop to a very specific gold piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's the point I always screw up.
Yeah.
If I had it all to do over again, I would make 111 easier. I really would.
Or shorter.
And shorter. I think a little bit of both.
maybe not easier, but maybe just shorter.
Yeah, I would. I definitely would.
One thing, like, I must give those games credit for, and we touched about it a little bit, was like the minimalistic way of storytelling. Did you plan everything from the start, or evolve things as you went along?
A little bit of both, and I think that Mike and I are going to have a slightly different perspective on this too.
All right.
The initial game the initial series, I had planned out the milestones of the series. Like, okay, I want this kind of thing, I want this kind of thing, this kind of thing, this kind of thing. And then as we developed Commander Video and we developed the story and we started working on the cutscenes, which are the primary storytelling thing, it changed a little bit as Mike and I would talk about what we want them to be. And then after that, Mike would basically go off and he would sit there, and I mean, I don't want to speak for Mike, but he would do all the background art and and he would tell his own story in that way. And in fact, Mike and I did a talk. Did we only do it one time? The storytelling through.
I think we did it twice, or we touched on it at eAC.
So we did a talk about exactly this once, and both Mike and I approached the story from different angles.
Right.
And so it did evolve over time through our collaboration, but the initial nugget was was decided on relatively early. We knew we wanted to follow a character from
I think
pre-birth to post-death.
There were like Alex said, there were like milestone story points, and we would sit down during the game and talk about more so like what feelings we wanted to express or invoke in the player or viewer. And so oftentimes it was like we had this story point and then we would explain those in 2 different ways. So one would be like the cutscene, which would get to the point, like let's say it was about Commander Video making a friend. And so you would sort of explicitly see a friendship connection in a cutscene, but in the background, I would try to display, or very abstractly make what I would consider sort of like friendship motifs or colors or whatever. And then, this is all sort of an interesting topic because we over here are very into Twin Peaks, and we've been watching Twin Peaks a lot.
Oh, wow.
And, there's sort of the same sort of thing where it's like they don't really explicitly ever tell you what's going on. Like it's up to the viewer to fill in the blanks. And that's really how we like to tell a story over here. We sort of did the same with Laser Life and Tharsis, where it's like, here are the key points. Now you put in to the story, the energy that you want. And I think personally that this is a great way of telling a story in video games because you're basically enlisting the player to sort of make the connections
and to be an active participant.
Yep.
Right.
Which is, by the very nature of video games, it's what they should be.
Yep.
Warner specifically seems to have a special place in your heart as you went back to the concept twice now. What made that game specific so appealing?
A couple of things. I think that the first thing is it's just really fun. It's a lot of very instant gratification. I will tell you that when developing it as our team started getting larger, the game would just be more fun for our developers to play.
It's like more fun for more people.
More fun for more
accessible.
people. And then we saw that in our own internal team. And then, of course, for a long time, the sales, I mean, to be quite frank, the sales for Bit.Trip Beat and Runner were neck and neck for years. And then Runner just slowly started pulling ahead. Of course, we didn't make a Beat 2 or anything like that, but
although we talk about it frequently.
We talk about it a lot. But it just sort of, it is the embodiment of Commander video. You're actually playing him in the actual realistic way, and I think, that's part of it.
I think that's a big part because some people don't even realize that in all 6 of the original Bit.Trip games, you are actually controlling Commander video. But a lot of people just view it as just an abstract arcade style games. But you are actually meant, like the game knows, whether the user knows or not is a different thing, but the game knows that you are controlling Commander video, just different aspects of him or him as his whole, but in different periods of his existence. And then when Runner came out, it was the first time you got to see his body in a playable way. And it's like what Mike was just saying, that led to an accessibility that video game players understand. I'm controlling a little person on screen, And so I think that was a large part of the success. And it is very fun to have that experience, controlling a little person on screen. So
yeah,
we're sticking with it for now.
I remember the first time seeing it back in 2010, and I think it was an IGN video where like the numbers would still float upon your head, like the original concept for that. I think still like you changed some stuff between that and the actual VR version.
For a long time in the original version, you could fire a laser beam from your eye and kill bats and stuff.
And you could also puff yourself up.
Yeah, you'd puff up into the void as you'd play
to absorb black beats.
And I will tell you that it was very fun and very interesting, but it sort of pulled away from that core gameplay experience. But
it was too many moves. Too many to keep
in your mind.
Keep track of very
fun.
Moving fast.
I look back on that and I always laugh because Commander video just running along, firing a red laser beam and killing bats.
That was very fun. It was cool.
Well, the reason why those Warner games work so well for me because it was so replayable. Like a single failure motivates you to do better. Like, was it hard to keep that mindset like intact for the second game? Because, like you said, you're doing more moves, you're doing more with it.
Well, I don't know if hard is the right way to describe it, but it was definitely something that was on our mind, and that's why we included checkpoints in Runner 2.
Begrudgingly.
Yeah, we didn't want checkpoints, but I think it was Mike's idea initially. I can't remember exactly, but the idea to opt in to the checkpoints, that you could skip them.
I had two things about checkpoints because I felt like they took away from the gameplay experience, but there was so much outcry for checkpoints. It's like at a certain point you cannot ignore the masses. And so the concept was like, if we're going to put in checkpoints, A, they're going to be the craziest checkpoints you've ever seen, and B, you're going to get a bonus if you opt out of it.
And that was the thing for us developing the original game was, why are we going to have checkpoints in a level that's only 1 minute long? If you have to replay a minute a couple of times, that's not the biggest deal ever. There's so many games out there where, you have save game states that you have to play, 10 minutes. Not as much these days, but
man, that Alien game was
that was brutal. It was a reluctant addition, but that was one way that we augmented the game. I think Runner 2 had shorter levels too. Every level is 1 minute long, and so that sort of helped with that too. And I think that was also kind of a concession on our part for the player, but I do think it ended up working out fairly okay. Yeah.
To be fair, there's still a bunch of screw you levels in there.
There are, for sure.
You will often get that with us.
I know that better than anybody else because I was one of the first people to ever completely beat it.
That's right.
That's
I remember.
So awesome.
We gave you the inside scoop. You're in the credits too, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I didn't expect that. It was a thing that happened at the last minute. I was still very thankful for even allowing to play the game and giving you feedback. So I was more like happy with that, to be honest.
That's excellent.
Well, we really appreciate it anyhow. So it goes both ways.
But that ultimate staircase level is just one thing that I just went wow on.
Ooh, you just reminded me. I forgot about the ultimate staircase level, and I'm working on some of the last levels in Runner 3 right now. Maybe we need to bring the ultimate staircase back.
You know what? I'm up for that.
I mean, it would make people so happy.
I mean, people wanted it in the first place. You asked back then if you wanted it in the game, and people wanted it.
That is true.
It's funny with the stairs. Stairs are one thing that have always been. Excuse me. Stairs are one of the things that have always been very difficult. But once you get them with the really short taps, you can just. I find that I can really transverse where I'm going to land on a step to set myself up for the next one. And I ultimately ended up really liking stairs. But since we've been talking about Runner 3 publicly quite a bit, stairs are something that people respond with, please no stairs. And in the iOS version, we, I don't know if you remember, or if you played it, but the stairs,
I did.
Because of the iOS version, we would just kind of auto jump up the stairs. So stairs are definitely something that we think about and talk about. And I'm always amazed at how difficult a simple staircase can be.
I'm always amazed at how much we talk about stairs, which is arguably one of the most boring things on the planet.
Exactly. Well, it depends.
Stairs in general.
It depends on who you are.
I suppose. If you're a stairsmith, maybe they're not all that boring to you.
Now you're making Runner 3, and naturally I have some questions about it, but the first one is, why third entry?
Well, I will give you a pretty basic answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Out of all of the things we've worked on, people continually ask for Runner 3. Like we would do a sale for Runner 2 or something,
right?
And people would instantly come back with we'd announce it on Twitter, the sale, and people would say, give me Runner 3. We want Runner 3. So that's like one aspect of it. Is it seems like it's something that is wanted by the public. The other thing is, it is a franchise, and we'd like to continue out the franchise. And then my last thing about it is incredibly fun to develop a runner game. I mean, it is probably the most fun we have in the studios when we're working on a runner game.
Yeah, that was going to be my answer.
Well, he answered it for you.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
I mind read.
We often mind well.
That's good. Are there certain things that you're doing radically different than the previous two games? I've seen certain glimpses in the trailer, and that excites me.
Okay.
Just really quick too. That trailer was sort of a last minute request that we had made, and what was seen in the trailer, I believe, is great. But what we have now is so much better. It's like a whole new sort of spin on it. But Alex, why don't you explain some of the new stuff?
But there are a few things that we wanted to do with Runner 3 to make it feel like an appropriate sequel. So, we didn't want to just make another like Runner 2.5 or anything like that.
No.
But at the same time, you have to be true to the franchise you've created. And so, it has to feel like Runner 1 a little bit. It also has to feel like Runner 2 a little bit. But then it has to have its own flavor as well. And so some of the stuff that we're doing is we're giving branching paths in a new way where you can go into the background, into the foreground. We're turning the camera around more. Not necessarily only turning it around, but the camera is much more dynamic in the game. So you're going to get a lot more exploratory sensations. There's vehicles in the game now that
have semi-free movement.
Yeah, and they just keep getting better and better as we work on them more. It really is what Runner 3 is to us is basically saying, all right, we loved Runner 2. All of our fans really loved Runner 2. Let's give them something new that is going to feel like home, but with some new renovations.
And one of my favorites, I think that this is the thing for me that is going to sort of set Runner 3 apart to a certain degree. We have a much richer narrative. The story is bigger, deeper. We have hero quests where you can interact with characters. It's going to feel like a much more well-rounded game, but with having that core runner experience. And that's what really excites me.
So hero quests, talk me through those. You're basically talking to a character, and what do you exactly do?
So a hero quest can be a couple of things, but just to give you an example, you will go talk to a character. You will get a nice bit of narrative that is oftentimes very funny. Some that still make me laugh, and I've seen them 100 times. And then you will be requested to bring back some items, and those items will allow you to unlock certain things.
And you have to go and find those items in levels, in other levels of the game.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they're hidden. They're hidden objects in the game. And this gets into the exploration part of Runner 3. So let's say you go to, level 1 and you get all the golds, and you beat the level. In the previous games, there's really not much motivation to go back to that level and see the other stuff that's there. But in Runner 3, there is other stuff there. And also, if you get one of these hero quests and an item, ends up in level 1, you go back and you go on a different path to try to find it. And it's a whole different experience. And sometimes you're collecting objects. Sometimes you're interacting with stuff that the hero quest givers tell you to do. And then you can check back with the people who gave you the quest to get hints on where you need to find these things. And so it's really like what Mike said. It's adding a lot more depth. And so it's adding depth, it's adding replayability. And also regarding replayability, there are multiple paths in each level, and there's different currencies, quote unquote currencies in Runner 3. There's gems and there's golds. The golds, of course, are holdovers from Runner 1 and 2. The gems are brand new. And if you want to get all the gems in a level, then you have to take the gem path, which is much, much harder than the gold path. So each level is essentially 2 levels in one, and one of them is very hard and one of them is normal.
And it's sort of our sneaky way of giving difficulty to the player. In Runner 2, we just had 3 difficulty levels. But in this case, you choose a separate path.
And it's dynamic. Yeah, it's dynamic. It's opt-in. And of course, you don't have to get a perfect to beat the levels either.
Well, and one last thing I want to talk about with Runner 3 is the retro levels are much different than the retro levels in Runner 1 or 2. It's much more. It's a full-fledged game that is gives Commander Video free control. It's a platformer, and it's sort of a hint into where Commander might be going next. And Jason's been working feverishly on that game. Jason Cirillo from Wodave fame, if you played some Wodave, which I'm sure you have.
Yes.
So those are going to be very exciting.
Wow. So the retro stages are basically just a typical platformer now. Wow.
Yeah, and instead of retro video game theme, they're more like retro cartoon theme
that are playable.
They looked really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they're adorable. So yeah, you're going to get to control Commander Video in all the directions and do all kinds of crazy moves.
Hence
for the first time.
The logo with all the arrows.
That's actually really funny because you say adorable. When I was writing down a question about those specific stages, I said the word adorable as well. So that's kind of funny.
Oh, that's good. We'll tell Jay that.
I think they look really good.
Yeah, thanks.
One thing of all these branching paths and changes, are the levels still like a typical length, or are they expanded as well?
They're expanded a little bit, about maybe a third longer in some cases.
They might even be twice as long. I think,
but depending on
which level.
Depending on which level, and the branching paths sort of change. The sort of idea of how big these levels are.
And we've got Commander Video running at different speeds too. So if you take a path that has like a speed boost that warps you, you're gonna go faster through the level, that kind of thing. But they're still bite-sized experiences, but they are they're based mostly on the song and how the song flows. So each song in the level, has a flow and a vibe that it wants, and we're tailoring the levels to that.
And there is a lot more music.
There is
a lot more music,
and the music is amazing.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So
Matt Harward is still doing that, huh?
Yes, he is. Yeah,
I think there's a lot to look forward to with this game.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we talked about vehicles and stuff. Are there other mechanics that we still haven't discussed, like double jump is now, I think?
Double jump is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's also wall jumps.
There's a slam.
Oh yeah, there's a ground pound.
Oh,
which is interesting, and we're going to add some little fun things that you can do with ground pound. But ground pound is also an interesting way. Dealing with ground pound and double jump together in conjunction gives you an amazing amount of control over Commander Video.
That's some advanced tactics.
Yeah.
It's amazing what some of us in the office are able to do by pairing double jump and ground pound. So you could, because the ground pound just slams you to the ground very fast. So you can, you could do a huge double jump and almost bonk and get into a crappy situation, but then you can like pound out of it, to save your ass. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that, but
you can say whatever you want.
I suppose that's true.
You can just beep you out.
That's true. And so that's a very, it doesn't seem like it's a cornerstone movement, but it really is. It's a very important one. There's also lane changing. So like I was talking about, where you can like split off and go into the background or the foreground. You can hop from one to the other.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and there is definitely more as well. There's all kinds of different new like level gimmicks as well, like stuff that you won't be expecting, when you're playing through, and that's totally unique to Runner 3. So there's a lot that you'll find that's neat. Oh, and dancing is back too.
My mortal enemy, the thing that I always... I think dancing is the thing that caused me to make the most mistakes.
Yeah. It's meant to.
It's meant to, and it's also so fun.
Yeah.
It is. Like one thing I just noticed by looking over the footage over and over, I just love how it looks. Everything looks so neat. Like it. One thing I also noticed is that Commander video seems to take more corners and going in objects like lifts. How interesting was that to make?
It's really interesting to make. It's new though for us, and so when I sat down to design all the levels, the first several that I designed did not do a lot of that type of stuff, like not a lot of banking or riding on things or anything like that, because I wasn't used to designing a runner game like that, and so it wasn't until a little bit in development where I started really thinking outside of the box. And, now that I'm working on the last few levels in the game, I'm doing things that I never would have even thought that I could do. So, it's been really liberating and interesting, but I think one of the things that I'm hoping that the rest of the development team holds me to task on is that I don't do too much of it,
Well, like I always tell them, you can go nuts in the last levels.
Yeah.
In terms of like really cranking up that difficulty. One thing that we were aware of that we were doing a different game. So we started in level 2, went to level 1, then level 3, and then we're going to go back to level 2 to finish it off. Just so the whole team could get up to speed on some of the differences that we're making. And so the game felt cohesive, because we were aware that we're also using a new engine as well. So that took time to ramp up on it. So we're not using any of, for the most part, we're not using a lot of the old, anything, the old tech for Runner 2. So
right.
Now the game is coming exclusively to Nintendo Switch, I think. Was that something tricky to decide upon?
I think it's exclusive at launch, so you'll and it's also there was a slight amount of misunderstanding here. It's console exclusive, so we always do our PC Mac side of it. Some verbiage kind of got confused along the way,
I see.
But it will be console exclusive to Switch on launch, and that will probably be for a certain amount of time at least,
which we haven't figured out yet.
And of course, we are giant Nintendo fanboys. The wish is that we could only work on one platform, and that one platform being Nintendo, so we can support all of its neat features. But we're also a small company, and we have to make sure we do things as businessmen as well. So there's sort of like that juggling act. But yes, this is getting a lot of our Nintendo support. I think also, we are just, like I said, giant Nintendo fanboys. So
well, and I'll also say, since our first series debuted on Nintendo platforms, and even Runner 2, it came out on the Wii U, a couple of days before the other platforms, but it was the leading SKU, and it was the SKU that we always, favored in the studio. Our fan base really is heavily Nintendo. And so I feel like, I'm hoping that we'll get to talk with some of those same fans, and that they've followed us through all these different phases.
I would also say that, and I'm not just saying this because we're talking to Nintendo, but I will say that Nintendo fans, I think, are the absolute best fans out there. They give the best feedback. They're the most polite. I don't see, a lot of anger about games where you see it on some other platforms. It's just, that's very good fans.
And that's not to say that they're not sometimes critical, but they're never mean-spirited. It's amazing. I don't know how Nintendo has garnered that kind of a fan base, but there's something to be said for wanting to surround yourself with reasonable people, and it rubs off on you when you're creating art, and you just want to do it for the people that you love.
Ah, that's lovely. How is it to work with the Nintendo Switch in general? Have you had any problems so far as development is concerned?
No, not really. It's actually in contrast to if you went from the Wii to the Wii U, the Wii U was just incredibly easy to work on in contrast to the Wii. And then now you skip ahead to the Switch, and it's even that much easier to develop on. It's like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I absolutely love the Switch anyway, but yeah, no problems. It's an amazing device, just amazing. I played probably half of Zelda in my bed just using the handheld version, which I never thought I would do, and then all of a sudden, I can turn right around and play out my giant TV. It's like just an amazing device.
Awesome. Alex, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I was going to say basically the same thing. It's just it's just wonderful to develop for. Much easier than platforms in the past.
You have released and are releasing more games as search provisions. Is there a chance that some of these games make it over to Nintendo Switch?
Yeah, I think some of them could actually be in the works right now, and also I think something that's generally known is Space Dave.
Space Dave is coming to Switch soon.
Yay! It's
very good.
It is very good. It just keeps getting better and better.
I look forward to that. I loved WoW Dave.
Yeah, well, you'll if you're up for it, you could do a talk with Jason when we're approaching the release of Space Dave, because he's the big driver behind the WoW Dave series and all things mini visions. But I just played Space Dave 2-player with Jay the other day, and we were just screaming. It was so much fun.
Awesome.
It was great. Yeah,
that's good.
So yeah, I think we're going to be bringing a lot of things to the Switch.
Awesome. So the following will come off as port begging.
Okay.
And maybe you'll kind of see it coming with the way this entire discussion seems going. One thing I would love to have, and this is more in theory than in practice, I would love to see a bit of a collection on that system.
Yeah, we would do. It probably won't happen, but never say never. We don't have any plans in the works right now. We have ported the original Bit.Trip series to several different platforms, and it's
all based off the original Wii code,
the Nintendoware,
which is very bizarre,
super crusty, and it is very, very much not easy to port.
Yeah, I was thinking about it, considering like the Joy-Con and the touchscreen. I was thinking about all of that,
Wouldn't it be awesome?
Yeah, it would be really cool. I don't blame you for not doing it. At the same time, I'm also the selfish person that says, please do it.
I wonder, well, you know what? At this point, it would probably, and this is no joke, it would probably be easier to remake. It would be
faster and easier to remake.
Yeah, just remake them.
But we'll do that for you.
Yeah, we'll do that for you. Will you accept that as a compromise?
Fine.
I actually think we could kick those out very quickly.
That's actually not a bad idea. We could think about that. That would be awesome.
All right. I'll take it. Is there anything that we've missed that you still want to talk about? If not, feel free to end it off with some closing words.
I think the only other thing I'd like to add is, for any of you who've ever played Runner or Runner 2 and enjoyed it, Runner 3 is just as enjoyable, if not more so. I loved Runner 2, and I went back to it the other day just because we've all got it on our Wii U's at our desks and stuff. And I fired it up the other day, and I just felt like Runner 3 was so much better. And I loved Runner 2. So if you've played them, you're probably going to want to pick this one up.
I would only say that there's a lot of fun little things that we're putting throughout Runner 3, and one of the things to look out for is also, we didn't really talk about this, but there's a lot more Charles Martinet, like a whole lot more Charles Martinet. We made him do some things in the recording studio that we very much hope to get into the game, because it is just some of the funniest stuff. So
we wrote the script and purposefully tried to make it impossible to speak.
Yes, we have done
because it's
some
so
things.
Weird and spazzy words and stuff, but he nailed it.
He's just an absolute professional, and he is an amazing person. So I would say look out for that as well.
Yeah,
I look forward to that for sure. Then I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out to us. We're always happy to talk with you.
And I want to thank you, who's listening right now. Yes, you. never thought I would talk to you directly, didn't I? For listening. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.